Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Let us have the sincere intentions. We're doing this lillahi ta'ala to get his approval, and inshallah, it will be a means for us to get into Jannah. Okay. We are going to continue today with the sins of the body. And the author said, to sit with an innovator or committer of enormous sin, to entertain one in one's sinning. So if someone is committing an enormous sin, whether this enormous sin is an act or a belief, it's prohibited for one to sit with this person in the same session while he is doing that to entertain him. So if someone needs to talk to this person about something permissible, let's say business, however, the person that he's talking to, he's drinking alcohol. So he comes to him while he's drinking alcohol and he talks with him about his need. And when he's finished, he leaves. This is permissible because he is not sitting with him to entertain him while he is doing the sin. The author said, for a man to wear gold, silver, silk, or what is mostly silk, with the exception of a silver ring. So it's not permissible for a man to wear a golden ring. A man is not permitted to wear silver jewelries except for a silver ring. The Prophet ﷺ wore a silver ring that he used to stamp the letters that was sent by him. So the ring had a part of it that is used to stamp letters. Also, it's not permissible for a man to wear silk. Silk is what is produced by the worm. As for the synthetic or fake silk, it's permissible for a man to wear it. What is prohibited is the silk that's produced by the worm. I think it's called like the silkworm. Likewise, if a dress material contains multiple materials, so pure silk and other materials, but the weight of real silk is more than the other materials, then it's prohibited to wear it. So when we talk about the silk being more, again, I want to emphasize we're talking about in terms of weight. So it's narrated in our Tirmidhi and others that the Prophet ﷺ said, which means silk and gold are made permissible for the females of this nation and prohibited for the males. So when we say it's prohibited for the man to wear silk, we mean by that the pubescent male. As for the non-pubescent male, it's permissible for the parents to make him wear gold or silver or the like. Or is it not? So is it permissible for the parents to make him wear gold, silver, or the like, or is it not? And in this case, there's a difference of opinion. Some said it's permissible for them to do that, and others said it's not permissible for them to do that. And in all cases, the child who is not pubescent yet is not sinful because he is not accountable. The author said, to be alone with a marriageable woman without the presence of a third party male or female in front of whom one would be shy to do an indecent act. So basically, it's not permissible for a man and a marriageable woman to be alone in a place without a third person with them, if there is no excuse. So this third person must be someone that would cause you to be shy. Basically, that you would be shy to do an indecent act in front of. So it's not enough if this third person is like a child. And by what I mean by child is like a 1 year old, 2 year old, or 3 year old, for example. And it's not enough if this third person was blind. So to be safe from committing the sin of khalwa, of being alone with a marriageable woman, and again for a marriageable woman to be alone with a marriageable man, the third person can be either a woman or a male. So some people said it's not enough if the third person is male, and this is not correct. The Prophet ﷺ said, which means if a woman is alone at home, so basically her husband is not home, let not one enter that except if he has with him one or two men. So let him not enter except with one or two men with him. So this is explicit evidence that this third person can be a man. But it is not enough if this third person is an enormous sinner, which means if he is an upright, trustworthy person, that would be enough. If he is an enormous sinner, it's not enough to be safe from committing the sin of khalwa. And here I want to bring something important, which is the elevator. A teacher of mine told me that even the elevator, the men and the women are not allowed to be together. Um, yeah, and this is according to Imam Shafi'i. So I don't, yeah, okay. So now if a man is in a masjid alone and a woman enters this mosque and there's no third person with them and there's no third person in there, right? So is this considered a prohibited khalwa or what? So this differs from one situation to other and to another. If the masjid frequently visited by the other people, that is, they come in and out of this masjid all the time, but at that particular moment they were alone, this is not prohibited because one would not do an indecent act because people are coming in and out. Now, the mosque that's not visited frequently all the times does not have the same judgment. So, for example, if every 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour one entered the masjid, this is not considered a valid visiting frequently. It's, yeah. So if a man was alone in this masjid and a woman comes in and finds that he's alone with her, then either he or she leaves the masjid. And what is similar to a masjid has similar judgments. The author said, for a woman to travel without an unmarried male or the like. So in the religion, it's prohibited for a woman to travel alone, except for a valid excuse. For example, she is able to go to Hajj. She has never been, it's an obligation on her. She does not find any non-marriageable men to go with her, any mahram to go with her. Even if she offers to pay a salary for them to take her, that is like her brother or her father or her husband, no one wants to go with her. And she even offers to pay, but they can't do it, they won't do it. In this case, she is allowed to travel without them to make Hajj. If she finds a trustworthy woman who are able to go to Hajj, she goes with them. Otherwise, it's permissible for her to go alone. For example, um, okay, so here's another example. Like something happens to her. She's in this particular situation and she needs to know the religious judgment, and she has to do what is permissible, and what's not haram. So she asks in the area, she asks the sheikh, she asks the teachers, but no one gives her an answer. There is no way for her to get the answer except by traveling to another area to ask a knowledgeable person. Then in this case, she is excused. Without an excuse, it's not permissible for her to travel alone. So sometimes the Prophet ﷺ, depending on the situation and the question that was asked to him, sometimes the Prophet ﷺ said that it's prohibited for the woman to travel alone for a distance of 3 days. In other hadith, he said for 2 days. In other hadith, he said for half a day. So what the scholars do, they looked at all of these hadith and clarified that it's prohibited for her to travel alone, regardless if it's a half a day, 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days. So um, she is not allowed to travel those distances alone. So Ayman, she was a slave woman owned by one of the parents um, of the Prophet ﷺ. After the death of his parents, she took care of him. She had a very strong belief, so she didn't find anyone to go with her from Mecca to Medina. So she immigrated alone. And on the way, she got very thirsty. She did not find water, but she heard over her head the sounds of wings. And then she saw a bucket of water coming down. She took the bucket and she drank from it. After that, she never felt thirsty until she died. So she used to actually go around Kaaba at times in extreme heat without feeling any thirsty. Without feeling any thirst. She wouldn't get thirsty. So she traveled alone, but that was for an excuse. So for an excuse is permissible. Without a valid excuse, it's not permissible. So the visiting of the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, it is not permissible for the woman to go alone. It is not valid excuse for her to travel alone without a mahram. The author said to unjustly enslave a free person or force him to do labor. So it's prohibited for you to force a free person to do something without his permission. If you have a free Muslim, it's not permissible to take him as a slave, and it's not permissible to make him do something that he does not want to do by force. To build a a well, to sell an item, to take you somewhere to sell something. It's not permissible for you to force him or for someone else to force him on your behalf. The author said to have enmity with a highly ranked righteous Muslim. That is a wali. So the believer who fulfills all the obligations, he refrains from all the sins. He does a lot of optional acts of worship. This is the definition of a wali. Allah said, which means that those who believe in Allah Ta'ala and adhere to the obedience of Allah, the angels will come before or during. Sometimes it's just right before, sometimes it's like during death, and tell them that they are accepted by Allah. From this verse, it's deduced that the definition of a wali is a believer who adheres to the obedience of Allah, which means he does all the obligations and lots of optional good deeds and does not sin. And again, we are like this class is we're talking about the obligations. So if someone um, fulfills all of these obligations and stays away from all these sins and does optional um, good deeds, sunnah deeds, then inshallah they will have the status of a wali. So having enmity towards a person, this type of person, a wali, is prohibited, and this is an enormous sin. If this is the case for a wali, so what would be the judgment for those who have enmity against Abu Bakr or Umar, Uthman or Ali? Among all the awliya, these are the top four. The one who has enmity to any of them, any of these four, is committing an enormous sin. He's not accepted by Allah Ta'ala, even if he prays all night and if he fasts all day, all the days of the year except Eid, he would still not be accepted. This is because he is an enormous sinner and he does not have a higher rank to Allah Ta'ala. And again, if we said that this is an obligation, and for a wali to for a person to become a wali, he would have to fulfill all these obligations, and if he's not fulfilling this obligation, then or he's not staying away from the sin, then he is yeah, sorry. So if he's not staying away from the sin, then he's not a wali because he has not stayed away from the sin. The author said to help others sin. Allah said in the Quran in Surah Al-Ma'idah, which means do not help others commit sins and injustice. So if you know, for example, that someone wants to buy grapes to make wine out of them, it's not permissible for you to sell the grapes to him. Or one wants to buy barley to make beer out of it. It's not permissible for you to sell barley to him. Or if someone's going to somewhere to commit blasphemy, it's not permissible for you to take that person to that place. You are not allowed to help him anyway, even if this person is a father, a mother, a wife, or husband, son, daughter, cousin, doesn't matter. Helping someone to commit blasphemy is by itself blasphemy. And to help someone commit a sin other than blasphemy is a sin by itself. So some people, they read religious books without learning from a trustworthy person. And this is why sometimes they must understand some statements. Sometimes in some Hanafi books, when they talk about someone who sells grapes to the one who makes wine, they use the term jaiz yajuz. So this term it sometimes means permissible. Other times, this term jaiz yajuz is used to mean that this is valid even if it is prohibited. So, what those Hanifis meant by saying that selling the grape itself is valid. So what those Hanafis meant by saying use jaiz is that selling the grape itself, it's valid, although one commits a sin by doing that. So they were talking about the transaction itself, the one who owns the money that he gets by selling the grapes. That's valid, but he is sinful for helping someone commit a sin. And so what makes it more clear, um, that sometimes they say jaiz while being sinful for doing that because they say it because they say that it isn't si- okay, sorry, yeah. So what makes it more clear that they say jaiz while being sinful for doing that? Um, because they say it isn't sinful to sell grapes. So it's very clear that what they mean by jaiz here is not permissible. It's not permissible but valid. Because how would it be permissible and sinful at the same time? It can't be. So what they mean by that, it is valid but sinful. So one time a person who claimed to be knowledgeable, he said there is no sin in selling grapes to someone who wants to make wine out of them. And when he was told, how did you say that there's no sin? Like this is contradicts the verse of the Quran, the explicit verses of the Quran. He said, well, the Hanafi said it. And then this person replied and said, the Hanafis would never say something like this. They would not go against the Quran. He said, well, they said it, and he showed the text, and it was the text that we just talked about, the letter of using jaiz yajuz. So this person said, um, so he did not understand, so this person did not understand what they meant by this word. So he thought that they meant it's permissible, but in reality, they meant it's valid, although it's prohibited. This is why one cannot just rely on himself to learn by reading some books, whether these books are short or long. One needs to acquire knowledge from other people who are qualified to teach him. The author also said to circulate counterfeit money. So everyone knows that circulating counterfeit money is prohibited. Like this is also the one who covers the copper with gold to make others think that all the pieces is made out of gold. That it's gold currency, for example. Likewise, the one who circulates the counterfeit money that people use nowadays, like the dollars or the euros, for example, all of that is prohibited because this is cheating and it's acquiring money of others in an unlawful way. The author said to obtain and use golden and silver utensils. So it's prohibited to use gold and silver utensils to eat, drink, or other than that. Even the container that people usually put kuhl in, it's prohibited to use gold and silver instruments uh, for it. And this goes for the women and the men. The Prophet ﷺ said, which means that the one who drinks and eats in the golden and silver utensils is going to be tortured in the hellfire in his organs, like the inner parts, basically. I think it's like stomach is a translation, but organs. Okay. Now, if one buys those utensils and he does not have the intention to use them, one just wants to leave them there as decoration. He wanted to obtain them. Now that he has them, he owns them. That's all that he wants to do with it. He doesn't want to use them for eating or drinking, for example. Is this permissible? The scholars differed on this. Some said that it's permissible because he's not using them. And some said it's not permissible because having them usually leads to one using them. This is why it's not permissible to have them even without using them. If someone cuts a plate of silver or gold, if someone has a plate of silver or gold, what does he do with it? He cuts it apart or he melts it. He can sell it even. So on the other hand, if the utensil is made out of copper, for example, but it has a very thin layer of gold, basically it's plated with a very thin of gold or silver, in a way that if you put it on fire, you would not gather from it a considerable amount of gold or silver. You can't gather the amount, um, you can't get money for it, basically. In this case, it's permissible to use these utensils. And the author said to neglect an obligation, to do an obligation, leaving out one of its integrals or conditions. Three, to intentionally commit an invalidator while performing an obligation. Four, to leave the Friday prayer, Jum'ah, when it is one's obligation, even if one prays Dhuhr. So leaving out an obligation is haram, whether it's praying, fasting, zakat, and the like. Also, to do the acts of the prayer while leaving out one of its integrals or leaving one of its conditions knowingly is also prohibited. One will be sinful for that because one is not doing it as Allah ordered for it to be done. Likewise, if someone does something that invalidates an obligation on purpose, while he knows that, for example, someone was praying and decided to drink some water intentionally while knowing he isn't praying, this invalidates his prayer, and he will be sinful for doing that. So if he decided to jump intentionally while praying, he has invalidated his prayer, right? This is haram. So when one is obligated to pray at Jumu'ah and he is not traveling, for example, if he leaves out praying at Jumu'ah, he is sinful even if he prays Dhuhr. The author said, for the inhabitants of a place to leave out praying the obligatory prayers in congregation. So, if there is a big city, a small city, or even a small village, the inhabitants of these places are not permitted to leave out praying in congregation. That is the five prayers. If all of them leave praying out in congregation, then all of them are sinful. So, if some of them pray in congregation in a specific place or in different places, in a way that one wants to pray in congregation can get access to this place and pray with them, that's okay, that's fine. So, like for example, in a big city, it's not enough to conduct a congregation prayer in one place. It has to be conducted in different places in a way that those who inhabit area A can pray Jama'ah, those who inhabit area B can pray in Jama'ah if they want, and so on. If this happens and some of the inhabitants of that town do that, then the others are not sinful. If all of them neglect to do that, then all of them are sinful. Abu Dawood narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, which means if there are three men in a village, or other than that, and they inhabit a place, but they do not pray in congregation, then shaitan will control them. The author said to defer one's obligation until the time is over without an excuse. If someone intentionally leaves out fulfilling an obligation until the time of this obligation is out, such person commits a sin by doing that, even if he makes up this obligation. If he delays praying until the time is out, by delaying it, he commits an enormous sin, although he made it up. So even if he had the intention since the beginning to make it up, if he had that intention, delayed it, then this is an enormous sin. As it is mentioned in the verse, which means woe to those who delay the prayers until the time of prayer is out. Until the prayer is out, which means This first basically means that they deserve severe punishment. Sleeping is not like that though. So if someone sleeps before the time of prayer is in and does not wake up except after the time is out, one is not sinful for that. But one has to make it up. It's not an obligation to make someone to have someone wake him up for Fajr, for example, or other than that. Also, it's not an obligation for you to set alarm. Because the Prophet ﷺ specifically mentioned that sleep is not a type of falling short in fulfilling the obligations. So there's not a sin in that. And it's not to join two prayers together except if for an excuse. Okay, like the traveling or sickness or the like. Okay. I'm not sure what the teacher meant by this last sentence, so I'm gonna have to probably look that up. Um, oh, I think he's basically saying that it's not an excuse to join the two prayers together, except for an excuse like traveling and sickness. Okay, that's all we have for today. That's all I have for today. Barakallahu fikum. If you guys have any questions, please reach out to me. رسي تهلينا الصلاة على النبي. لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. بارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم.